Morning, gang. I know it's been a couple weeks since I posted anything. I've been pretty busy renovating my shop, and by that I mean I've been finishing my paint booth area. It's been, you may have seen in other videos, I had a lot of exposed insulation and different things, but anyway, I'll show you a video on that later. This car is my son's 2003 Toyota Camry with the 4-cylinder, and we've had some issues with it. A month ago, I guess, or maybe 2 months, it was having trouble getting it started. The battery was old, so we put a new battery in it and everything worked fine, but it continued to have problems. The starter would lag or drag, and it also developed a rough idle. And I did a little more research, and I found that whenever you disconnect the battery, the computer resets to the original factory settings. So over time, as the engine or the throttle body gets carbon buildup and junk in it, the computer will adjust the airflow to make everything keep running. But whenever you change the battery and it goes back to the factory defaults, it thinks it's a new car again, and it's trying to run it as a new car, even though there are restrictions in there. So this video, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to change the starter, which is right there, and I'm also going to clean out the throttle body, which is back here. So I'm going to go through the steps, and what I want to do first, I'm going to fire up the car so you can hear what I'm talking about. Okay, this car has 194,000 miles on it, and we'll see if it'll start. I don't know if you heard all that, but it really struggles to get running, and I'm giving it some gas. So I'm going to let off the gas. You can see how bad that engine's shaking. Hopefully you can anyway. But after I'm done with it, I think it'll be fine. So let me get started. Okay, first step is I'm going to remove the battery, and it's fairly simple. The negative terminal had a 9mm nut on it, and the positive had a 10mm for some reason. And so once those are loose, you can pull them up and off. And then there's a bolt up here on the core support. You can loosen that, remove it. And then this one in the back has a hook on the end of it. So you loosen that nut, release the hook, and then the bracket will come out of the way. Set that aside, and the battery will come out. Now, part of the reason for removing the battery is I need to have access to remove the starter. And underneath the battery, there's this plastic tray, and that just comes up and out. You can see it's got two indents here that align with these two down here. That's all that holds that in place. Get that out of the way, and now you can see there's two bolts here. Those are 10mm, and those are part of a bracket system that supports the air box. So before I go any further, I'm going to remove the air box. So we're going to have to take off the top part of the air box, and there's two bolts here, 10mm, and another one, it's hard to see in the shadows, but it's back there right behind this. Have to remove this clip, which is just a matter of pushing in on this little tab and switching that, pulling that off. This one as well, same thing, push down a little tab, pull that off. And then this hose back here has a finger clamp. You can just pinch that together with your fingers and move it around, and then that hose will slide off. And then I'll set the camera up so I can pull this out of the way. I've also loosened this bolt right here, that clamp. That was a 10mm as well. So once I get the camera set, I'll pull that out of the way. Okay, I'm going to lift up on the air box, unhook this left side, give it a little twist, and it comes right out. This would be a good time to change your air filter as well. This one's kind of dirty. I may have to go get one of those. Also, this in this big opening here, that is your mass airflow sensor. That's what this is. And they do sell chemicals to clean those. Sometimes it helps to do that. I don't know if I'm going to mess with it. The next part is I'm going to pull off the lower part of the air box. And there's 3 bolts. You can see there's one there, and the third one over here. And there's also a secondary clip here, this wire bundle. You have to separate that and get that bundle loose because it can't come with it. So I'll get those bolts out and take the lower half out of the way. Okay, one thing I wanted to point out too, this there's a square tube right here, and you can follow it back. I hope you can see through the shadows, but that's actually the inlet for your airbox. And you'll be sliding that off of that tube. You can see the opening right there. So when this comes up and out, oh, there's a secondary wire. Just have to release that one the same as you did with the first one. We'll get that wire loose and take this airbox all the way out of the way. Hard to do with one hand, but let me get that loose and we'll continue from there. Okay, now that the lower half of the airbox is out of the way, this exposes the bracket that I was trying to talk about earlier with these 2 bolts, and you can see where that's blocking the starter. So I'm going to remove those 2 bolts and get this bracket out of the way. And now that that bracket is out of the way, which those were 10mm bolts by the way, I'm going to remove that inlet, and those were also 10mm bolts, and that just slides right off. And you can see there was a little tube down here on the bottom. I'm not sure what this does exactly, but obviously it's part of the system, so you have to make sure that slides back on there. And now you can see the starter much clearer. So the next step is to remove the starter. I'm going to expose some of this stuff here, and I'll determine what those nut sizes are and the bolt sizes, and show you that in just a minute. Alright, hopefully you can see that okay. The power lead was a 12mm nut, so I'll remove that. And then this little clip right here, you got to push on this little post sticking up, push in on that, and then that clip slides out. Okay, the bolts, the main bolts, are 14mm, and I've got these one removed and I'm loosening the other one now. Set that aside, and the starter slides right out. Anyway, so now I'm going to swap out the starter, get the new one in place, and I'm going to point out that the starter I'm using today is actually from O'Reilly Auto Parts. They have a limited lifetime warranty on this one, so I went with them. And you can see there whatever their brand is, and so I'm going to use it, and basically just going to reverse the process. I'm going to obviously remove their little pamphlet here and reinstall this and get it running. So I've installed the 14mm bolts, reinstalled the power lead, and I used the nut from the old starter. This one was a little thin, I didn't like the way it looked, so I used that one. Make sure that little rubber boot goes back around it to protect it. And then your secondary plug-in snaps in, and that'll take care of the starter. So now I'm going to go on to taking off the rest of the tubing at the inlet for the throttle body, and I'm going to clean that up. Okay, so I'm going to remove this ductwork. There's a little hose right here, and it just goes in these little notches. That comes out pretty easily, and it had a finger clamp on it, and it went onto that tube right there. So separate that, and then this bracket is in a little rubber sleeve right there. So we're going to set that aside. Gonna have to separate probably this clamp right here. I'll need pliers for that. And down here is another clamp right there, and I'll probably need some pliers on that to get it loose. And hopefully it's just those two, and I'll be able to pull this ductwork out of the way. Okay, so I went with the bigger fitting here, disconnected that, and release that clamp, and everything just comes right out of the way. So I'm going to set that aside, and now you can see the top of, or the inlet for the throttle body, and you can see black gunk. Hopefully I'll get a flashlight on there and show you in just a second. But I'm going to clean that, and I'm going to use some CRC, throttle body and air intake cleaner. So I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so there is the inlet. I'm going to take some CRC, spray it in the inlet, break that stuff loose. I'm also going to take a rag, in this case part of an old t-shirt. I'm going to soak it with the CRC, and then I will work my way down into the throttle body and clean out. You can see the black gook in there. And it's going to take a little bit of effort to clean all this. I'm not going to show you it all, but you can move the throttle body a little bit with your finger or with a screwdriver. Just be careful, and clean up all the area around the butterfly. Well, there you can see some of the black gunk that's accumulated inside of that thing, and obviously that'll affect how it runs. So while I'm taking care of other things, I prop that open so that it can evaporate the residual, and I'm going to go back and start putting pieces back in place. So I'll come back and put the air duct back on top here, and then I'll reinstall that little bracket and go from there. Okay, the duct hose is reconnected. I've got the lower half of the air box in, and I'll set the upper half, and I think when I go back to the parts store to get my core charge back on the starter, I'll get a new filter. And all I have left to do is set the battery in place and finish my connections and give it a test run. Everything's in place. Let's see what happens. How to get that residual junk out of there? That's pretty nice. Let's try that again. Oh yeah, like a new car. This job was pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and I think you can do it. Thanks for watching.